The current school policy on drug and alcohol usage in our schools sets a no-tolerance standard. What considerations, if any, should be taken to further supplement the policies and procedures that focus on drug and alcohol usage in our schools? What considerations should be made regarding the school's role in drug and alcohol awareness, enforcement with local school enforcement, and seniors? Okay.
Well, it's obvious emotional response can be my weakness. So I'm going to stick to my paper here because this is such an important issue and I've given it tremendous thought. I've attended all of the meetings over the last couple of weeks and I think I know parts of the inside story that maybe some people don't know that are really important and dear to me. I was a bit comforted at the meeting last night to hear the speaker, Mr. Gammon, reinforce my instincts and strong personal beliefs that communication and family involvement are the most important elements to drug and alcohol abuse prevention. I am indeed an advocate for education, but in our community we can take great pride on strong and committed and involved families, and there will be nothing our schools can do that will give our kids a better defense against a toxic culture that is not unique to Whitefish Bay than to keep the communication and the capturing of our kids' hearts in our homes. The DARE program my daughter went through involved parents right through to the graduation ceremony. I remember well Mr. Hawley saying that there's no substitute for knowing where your kids are, who they're with, and what they're doing. Seems all of the research-based new approaches don't change where the responsibility lies with parents. And I feel so fortunate to live here in Whitefish Bay where most of the parents do their job and do it well, and those who run into problems have the love and support of a community willing to step up and help, and certainly we saw that. I'd like to see the schools pushing the police department to have another. Officer Stefanski was promoted to lieutenant. He was a great guy. We need someone like him in our schools, someone who's connected to our kids. I'd love to share my professional experience in law enforcement. 2 minutes couldn't do justice to this, so I guess I can't even read my last paragraph. But I think it's really the family, folks.
As Debbie said, this topic has become very, very urgent and very, very important to all of us, even though it's unfortunate that it took that incident to cause that to happen. This problem existed in this community as it exists in so many other communities. We have, the school has, a policy. And there are a couple interesting words in that policy. Expressly forbidden and vigorously enforced. Nice words, nice words. Very, very difficult to do. Very difficult to do. I managed an organization that had both random and for-cause testing. Random was easy. Your number came up, you went and gave a sample. If you failed, there were repercussions and you paid the price. For cause was much more difficult because most of the people who had to determine the for cause were not trained sufficiently to be able to do it properly. So we expended considerable sums of money to train our supervisory people so they could look at folks and say, yes, his behavior or her behavior is not appropriate and we need to do something, we need to get the test, and if they fail the test, we need to take some action. I think we need to invest some money, not in just educating one or two teachers in the school or one or two staff in the school. I think every person that works in our schools, especially the high school, or maybe even today the middle school, needs to have that kind of formal training so that they can do what they need to do. What role should the school play? I believe it's education. I believe it's detection. I believe it's enforcement of its policy, a tough policy, and I believe it's communication to law enforcement, to parents, to whomever there needs to be that communication. In the end, parents communicating with their kids is an important part of solving this problem. Thank you.
I have also been at the recent meetings that Debbie referred to, the Bay United meeting as well as the speaker, and I also recently heard the police chief address the village board and give an explanation of questions about the citizen calls related to the Laughlin, concern about drug activity at the Laughlin house. I think one of the problems right now is that there's something of a crisis in confidence in our institutions that are supposed to deal with drug enforcement policies. People are concerned about the police department. We try to avoid making policies saying, well, everybody knows this is happening, everybody knows, but unfortunately, in this case, people were saying everybody knows if you get a search warrant, there'd be drugs in the house, and sure enough, when they got a search warrant, there were drugs in the house. So it's given, I think, some credence to people saying, well, everybody knows these things are happening in the high school and nobody's doing anything about it. So I think that what we need to do from the school board perspective is when we think about the school's responsibilities, it seems to me that very broadly there are two. One is education, a curriculum that's an effective drug education curriculum that talks not only about the health effect of substances, but also the consequences for getting caught and the social cost. I think that many students think of drug use and abuse as a victimless activity. It's not a victimless activity either for the user or for people around the user. Apart from education, that I think schools need to be responsible for what happens in school buildings. And I think right now there's a big gap in people's perceptions of what the school's stated policies are and how those policies are enforced. I think there are so many questions and so many allegations that it's very important for the school district to explain the policies, to explain enforcement, and then to find ways to collaborate with the community to adopt policies that people have more confidence in. My time is up, but I just want to make one more comment.
Jerry?
Can I make one more comment?
Jerry?
I think
Sorry.
No, you're not.
I think the district does a pretty good job of providing general information and education about drug and alcohol abuse to our students. If you look on the website, district website right now, there's a 2-page document entitled School District Efforts Related to Alcohol and Drug Use. It's a fairly significant list, not only of the type of education and information that kids are receiving in the schools, but also the information and education that the counselors and the teachers and the principals are receiving, ongoing education. And I'm glad about that, but I think I'd like to see at our middle and our high school better communication about how our no tolerance policy is enforced. And this really is speaking to part of what Joe was saying, nice words but difficult to do. In other words, what happens if a child comes into a classroom and a teacher suspects that they are under the influence of alcohol or drugs? What is the responsibility of that teacher, and how does that policy, how can you enforce that policy? And do these kids know what the consequences are of this policy? I mean, it's great to say it's no tolerance policy, and it probably has more of an impact for athletic purposes because you miss games. But what actually happens? I think that the teachers really, they have a huge responsibility, and I'd like to know how that actually is enforced with the administration. And I don't get the sense that parents have a clear understanding of this at all and need to have that clarification to feel, I think, a little more trust in our kids and our schools being taken care of and having this policy enforced.
Thank you. Tough